Hello, everybody. How are you doing today? I want to ask you something. Have you ever heard of the Guinness Book of World Records? It used to be my favorite book when I was a kid. It looks like this, and it has all sorts of awesome records in it that people have accomplished. For example, the tallest dog in the world is a Great Dane named Zeus, who's 1.2 meters tall. He was recognized as the world's tallest dog on October 4th, 2011. And did you know that the woman with the longest fingernails in the world is Lee Redmond? She started growing her nails in 1979, and in 2003, they were 7.5 meters long. Or how about this one? This is Otto, who's a bulldog that lives in Lima, Peru. He broke the record for the longest human tunnel traveled through by a skateboarding dog. He had to go through 30 people to do that. If I hadn't shown you those pictures, would you have believed my stories? You might not have. You might have been skeptical of what I was saying. Do you know the word skeptical and what it means? According to the dictionary, skeptical means not easily convinced, having doubts or reservations. People who are skeptical have difficulty believing things that they're told unless they see evidence of it for themselves. People like this often doubt the things that they're told until they see evidence. The Bible is full of stories about people who are skeptical. Do you remember who doubted Jesus' resurrection in our video last week? Mary Magdalene went to the disciples to tell them that she had met Jesus and that he was risen from the grave, but the disciples didn't believe Mary. They thought that she was seeing things or that she just wished that Jesus would come back. But then, Jesus proved to everybody that he was back by appearing to the disciples in their locked apartment. There was one disciple who wasn't there, though, when Jesus appeared. He was a man named Thomas, and he was one of the 12 apostles, or the disciples that were the closest to Jesus. When Thomas returned to the other disciples, they had some amazing news to tell him.
Thomas, there you are. We're so glad you're back. We have the best news. Jesus is alive. He's returned from the dead, just like he said he would before he got arrested.
Matthew, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard. I know we've seen some crazy stuff since we started following Jesus, but I just can't bring myself to believe that Jesus could really be back.
But Thomas, how can you say that after seeing what Jesus did? He healed people, he banished demons, he even raised Lazarus from the dead.
I know he did all those things. That's why I thought he was invincible, that there was nothing that could stop him. It was too much for me when he died. That's why I had to go away for so long. Please, don't make me go through that grief again.
We all took it hard when Jesus died, Tom, and none of us were ready to believe either. But it was Jesus who came to us when we needed him. He taught us all about the scriptures and explained to us that he had to die to fulfill the prophecies about him.
Guys, I'm telling you, I don't believe it. Until I see what you saw, including the holes in his hands and feet and the wound in his side, I won't buy it.
Another week passed, and even though the disciples kept insisting to Thomas that Jesus was back, he still wasn't ready to accept it.
Tom, we're getting so tired of trying to convince you. Do you think we're all lying? Jesus is really back from the dead.
Shh! For crying out loud! Will you be quiet? The Romans are everywhere, and if they hear you saying Jesus' name, they'll know we're in here and break the door down. They're rounding up anyone who followed Jesus, and they'll use any excuse to arrest someone they suspect of believing in him.
I know you're scared, Tom. We all are. But the truth is so much more amazing than our fears. If you could only know what we know, you would forget fear as well, and would share the hope that we all have.
I wish I could believe like you do, Matthew. But you got to see Jesus in the flesh. until I also get to see his hands and his side, where the Romans wounded him during his crucifixion. I just can't believe with you.
That night, the disciples were eating supper together. The windows were all shut, and the doors were barred to protect them from the Romans. Nobody could get in, right? Wrong. To everybody's amazement, Jesus himself walked right through the door.
Thomas, my friend, peace be with you.
Jesus? It's really you. I can't believe it.
So I've heard. Tom, don't be afraid. It's me, your teacher. Come here and look at my hands and my side. Now can you see I'm back from the dead? Just like I promised you.
It really is you, Jesus. I'm ready to believe now.
Tom, you only believe because you can see me. But the real blessing is for people who don't see me but still believe.
The presence of Jesus is a really powerful thing. People have worshipped Jesus for thousands of years because they felt his presence in their lives, and they felt how his presence has changed them for the better. Believing in Jesus, though, can sometimes be a difficult thing. Take Thomas, for instance. He knew Jesus personally, and Jesus had even told him that he would come back from the dead. But Thomas still wasn't ready to believe for a long time, until Jesus came to him. Being skeptical isn't always a bad thing, though. Jesus himself warned his disciples in the Bible not to believe everything that people said in his name, because there are lots of liars who call themselves prophets but aren't. Even though Thomas is mostly remembered these days for doubting Jesus' resurrection, that doesn't necessarily make him a bad person or even a bad disciple. Thomas was faithful to Jesus and to his friends. I mean, he even came back for his friends after Jesus' death, just to make sure that they were okay. Thomas shows us that faith isn't always something that jumps out at you. Usually, it's something that takes a lot of time to grow and to be nurtured. Faith is like a plant. It has to be constantly watered and cared for, and slowly, it grows up to be big and strong. Jesus is the water that nurtures our faith. He comes to us when we need him to encourage and to strengthen us. Just like a locked room, Jesus walks into our hearts when we most need it. Here are some questions that you can discuss with your family. Jesus says, "The real blessing is for people who don't see me but still believe." What do you think that means? Thomas was frightened that the Romans would find and arrest them for being followers of Jesus. Do you know of anywhere in the world where Christians are arrested just for saying that they love God? If not, ask your parents if they know about any situation like this. Having doubts is a normal part of faith. In fact, if we doubt parts of our faith and question it, that could lead us to greater answers that let us strengthen our relationship with Jesus and understand God better. So I encourage all of you, think about your faith, ask questions about it. Is there something you don't understand? Are there questions that you want to ask your parents? Is there somewhere in the Bible where you can find those answers? This brings us to our challenge of the week. Hey guys, your challenge of the week this week is to ask a question about Christianity. Your question can be about Jesus, it can be about the Bible, it can even be about the church and how it works. There are literally no wrong questions to ask. When you know your question, ask your parents and see if they know the answer first. Maybe they can even help you do some internet research so that you can find the answer together. Write down the answers you find, and then bring your questions and your answers to our Zoom meeting this Sunday. You can show off your questions and your answers, and see if maybe someone else in the group has an answer that they can give you. We'll talk about your questions together this Sunday. Take care, everybody. I can't wait to see you all again. Have a good week.